Welcome to Write Good, the podcast that helps you write good. I'm R.S. Benedict. If you've been on the internet at all, you've probably heard a dude with questionable facial hair call a female character a Mary Sue. But what does that mean? Does it mean anything anymore? With us today to talk about Mary Sues is Jen Albright of Have You Seen This?, a podcast about obscure and misbegotten cinema. Hi, Jen. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, thanks for having me. By the way, I am the original Mary Sue. I can do literally everything perfectly.
Nice. Mainly, though, what you do at your podcast is watch very strange, obscure movies that I've never heard of, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, we talk about it all. We talk about well-regarded, forgotten films. We talk about noble failures, and we talk about complete trash. Check us out on HYST Pod on Twitter. You can also catch us on Patreon, and for $2 a month, you can get some really cool bonus content, which is a fucking bargain.
Yeah, that's cheap.
Most people want your $5 a month, but we're only asking for $2. So check us out, patreon.com/Have You Seen This?
Sounds good. All right. Now, as an internet fandom expert.
Yes, I have wasted many an hour.
Right. As a person who, like me, has wasted far too much time on the internet, can you tell me, where does the term Mary Sue originally come from?
Well, it was a term that floated around as long as I was aware of fan fiction on the internet, which probably would have been about, very late 90s, I want to say.
Right.
But it actually came from Star Trek fandom, which in a lot of ways is the fandom for a lot of fanish tendencies.
Right, that's the origin of the term slash, too, in Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah, Star Trek was absolutely, critical and seminal fandom, and mainly run by women, that's a whole other discussion. But the Mary Sue term literally came from a fanfic in a Star Trek zine, I want to say in about the early 70s, maybe 1973, about...
That long ago?
Yes, and it was about a perfect girl named Mary Sue who's 15 and with a dazzling smile and trips onto the bridge of the Enterprise and dazzles the crew and then dies very beautifully of a mortal disease. It's very love story.
I didn't know it was that old.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, 1973, and it was a
Wow.
parody story called A Trekkie's Tale. And it was taking off on some, unfortunate trends that you tend to see, you will probably always see in derivative fan works.
Right.
Which is the tendency to create a self-insert character who is maybe just a little too perfect. And again, fandom often being very female-centered. Usually it's a female self-insert. There's a kind of an offshoot called the Gary Stew.
Right, but that's not a term you hear very much.
No, you don't. And and that's opening a whole other can of worms where it's and this has been an ongoing debate in fandom circles, is do we judge female characters more harshly? Are we being too hard on young writers just starting out by picking on them for their Sues? But we have a whole podcast.
Right. So that's what it started as. It was this really specific thing, specific to fandom, to a fan fiction self-insert, perfect girl character.
Yeah, I guess because it was such an apt term that it stuck. Obviously,
right.
It struck a chord with people, and, that's why we're still using the term more than 40 years later.
And it's so perfect that it's the name Mary Sue, too, that she didn't give herself a name with a lot of, Y's and apostrophes or something. I guess because it was the 70s, before people were going to do that.
Maybe that would be more of a thing, and, maybe it would depend on the fandom. If you were writing in, Lord of the Rings fandom, you'd make up something which was like Arwen, but not,
You're right.
Arwen with extra
right.
Z's. I don't know.
Gratuitous E's after every vowel.
Right.
The George R.R. Martin rule. All right, so that's how it started, but the terms kind of become something different, right?
Yeah, obviously, as fandom kind of expanded beyond the kind of Xeroxed photocopy zine circles and out of the conventions that were really only attended by fans and stuff like that, as fandom kind of started to trickle into the mainstream, I think you had people becoming more aware of these kind of terms. And it is kind of a trip for me to hear like fanish terms like being bandied about in like the mainstream popular culture. I mean, at least like on the internet. Right. But I mean, I guess that's the nature of online, because now online isn't just kind of little walled off spaces for people who are savvy with computers anymore. It's just become one big mush pile.
Right.
So, and you know, more and more people are reading commentary about fan-derived works and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think what it kind of culminated in is in, you know, kind of the moment when like I did a double take was when The Force Awakens came out, and the character of Rey was immediately labeled as a Mary Sue.
Absolutely. She was. I've heard that a lot,
now,
unfortunately.
This is really funny to me because like I was a Star Wars fan, like as a teenager, like growing up, like when I was 14, like I just fucking loved Star Wars. It was my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, every kid loves Star Wars. It's the best for kids. It's just perfect for a kid. It's awesome.
Yeah, and so to that end, because I was also like a creative little dork, I wrote my own self-insert Star Wars fan fiction about like a girl who had the Force, and she got to study with Luke Skywalker to become a Jedi.
Of course.
Yeah. Fortunately, it was Jen. It wasn't Het or like that. Like, it's like teenage fan fiction sex is so embarrassing. I heard the word that. No. But when I went to see Force Awakens, which like, you know, I enjoy. They're fine. Yeah. They're a little bit clunky to me. I mean, like, it's Force Awakens is the only thing that I've ever seen by J.J. Abrams that I haven't despised, so that's a point, I guess. But when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, I love Rey. She's just like my self-insert from when I was a teenager. Like, she's really cool. I like her, you know, because she has a personality. She's like funny. But she's experienced adversity.
Right.
She learns that she has this gift and she gets to go do cool things. And Han Solo wants her to like come on his ship and be part of his crew. I'm like, that is fucking cool.
Right.
But for some people, it's a bridge too far, I guess. Like if it's a female character.
It's odd.
I don't know. Like, what do you think?
Luke Skywalker was absolutely like a kid adventure wish fulfillment for me. I mean, he's this small town boy whose job is like moisture farming and going shopping. And he gets to fucking be super psychic space prince and defeat all the bad guys and be the most amazing person ever. Like, that's so clearly a kid wish fulfillment vehicle. And that's fine. That is okay. In media, it is totally fine to have wish fulfillment stuff in media because it's fun. It's okay to have fun sometimes, and it just made me a little sad that when we saw a female equivalent to it, people had to get grumpy about it.
Yeah, because it sort of begs the question of, aren't there a lot of I mean, and it's like a really simple question. It's like, aren't there a lot of like badass, like very highly powered, like male characters that are kind of wish fulfillment for the reader?
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, because I like, again, like as being an avid reader as a teenager, like I read a bunch of the Ian Fleming Bond novels. Bond is very much a wish fulfillment character, both on page.
Yeah, he's a super spy who's super smart, super athletic, super suave, always gets the girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like he's good at everything. He's just the embodiment of that like mid 20th century male fantasy, down to like the cool suit and the company car and everything, which again, totally fine. He's a fun character. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's funny how we just like accept that as a kind of like a because Bond is someone that a lot of us like project fantasies onto.
Absolutely.
On the most basic level, you know, it's like, yeah, you want to be him or you want to fuck him, you know, like that's pretty much how it works.
Right, and every other kid in a tuxedo posing for a prom picture does the Bond pose.
Why do girls always do that?
You cannot help it.
Why do girls always do
It's impossible not to do that.
Girls always do the back-to-back Charlie's Angels thing with the finger guns.
Yeah, that too. It's Charlie's Angels or Bond. You have to do one of them. And again, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with this fulfillment, projecting your fantasy to a person. It's fun.
Now, Charlie's Angels... were they comically overpowered? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I know that they were 3 little girls from the academy. I think one of them played tennis with with a grenade one time. That's what I understand.
Well, because I remember the show being, obviously, the show was like Aaron spelling corn, but, the movie was a little more kind of like winking at you a little bit and like playing with like the fantasy aspects of the women's. But I guess because Cameron Diaz was like goofy, she wasn't like a Mary Sue in that or anything.
Right. Yeah, it had a little bit more of a sense of girl power, tongue-in-cheek. It was a really funny, cute movie, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, they did play up a little bit of the, hey, these are three extremely attractive women who have to disguise themselves in sexy outfits for legitimate reasons that are not a plot contrivance.
Yeah. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, because I think my frame of reference is... just because of my generation is like pushed like a few years back. But like, it seemed like female wish fulfillment usually consisted of these kind of, it was like sexy adventures, but like nothing too, like nothing too crazy, nothing too gritty, and nothing that necessarily dived that much into the character or backstory of the female character. Because you'd have like a silly romp like Charles Angels. And again, like if you can think of a counterexample, like please tell me, because if I'm talking out of my ass, like I want to know. Because like if you take Bond, like as they explored the character, he experienced adversity, like on Her Majesty's Secret Service. His wife was killed, living...
They pointed a laser at his testicles at one time.
Well, even before that, like with Timothy Dalton's last outing as Bond and... Not living the second. His very close friend was his wife on his wedding day, and that License to Kill. Was that
License to Kill?
Yeah.
Yeah, where he loses his license to kill.
Yeah.
Like in an American cop movie.
Yes.
You're off the case. You're too close to the action. Turn in your badge.
We're taking away your zeros. And then that turns the narrative into like a revenge story, basically. I'm trying to think of like female wish fulfillment centered revenge stories. I mean, you have a novel and a movie like True Grit, but that's not like wish fulfillment. It's like a story of a girl like hiring this guy to help her.
I mean, I don't know if you want to say The Bride in Kill Bill. She does get revenge, but I'm not sure if that's a wish fulfillment revenge so much as I want to watch a hot chick with a sword decapitate people.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like Uma Thurman is extremely cool.
Oh, totally.
They do.
I mean, I think wish fulfillment characters tend to be more like in romances, it seems like, rather than in adventure stories. Like, I'm thinking of Twilight. I mean, that's obviously total teen girl wish fulfillment.
Yeah, blatant self-insert.
Oh, absolutely.
And isn't that also true of the Outlander series?
Could be.
Because I heard a story about how, I forget her, Diana Gabaldon, I think her name is. She was inspired to write the story because she watched an old Doctor Who episode with the character, the Doctor's companion, Jamie McCrimmon, who's like a kind of a young, sexy Scotsman.
All right. I don't know much about the Outlander series at all. I'm sorry.
That's literally like all I know about it. I just found it extremely funny because apparently she's also like really against fan fiction.
Oh no.
Like you might want to verify that, but that is what I had heard. And I was like, well, this seems like you took a notion that you had and then you turned it into a book. And like not judging.
Yeah, which is fine. That's the basis of so much literature or art anyway. You're inspired by other stuff and you bring something new to it. That happens a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, and that's like another perennial in fandom is creators, and you understand it. Like creators become very protective of their copyright. And to a degree, you
of course.
You have to be because you can be totally blindsided if someone's like, oh no, like I sent you the script, remember? So now I'm going to sue you or whatever. But
right. I mean, you can get fucked over by so many different people if you're not super, super careful.
Mm-hmm. That's why a lot of places don't accept unsolicited submissions. Like they just don't want the legal trouble. So
right.
I mean, they don't want to read your sues, but anyway. We were speaking of sues.
Yeah, they don't want to read your terrible fiction either. But, it's because of legal trouble. That's the real reason. Really, otherwise I'd love to read your terrible fan fiction.
So I was trying to remember like a very which was Marissa Flores. Another Star Trek figure who was based on a one-off character from a Next Generation episode, a little girl who got stuck in the lift with a couple of other kids and Captain Picard. And, oh, Picard hates kids, but how is he going to manage this situation? So he makes her his number one, you know, and then he tells her she did a good job, you know, being in the crew or whatever. Well, there was a guy who extrapolated an entire character out of that one-off. He gave her a last name based on the actress's name, and he wrote a whole series of stories about this really awesome girl, Marissa Flores, who's a Starfleet officer at 15, and solved the Kobayashi Maru in like half an hour or something like that.
Oh, it's a girl Wesley Crusher.
Yes, and funny thing about Wesley Crusher...
One of those was enough, man.
Yeah, and yeah, I read a little bit about Wesley Crusher because he's kind of like an archetypal Sue character.
Right, that everybody revolted against.
Yes, but the thing is that he really was kind of a self-insert for Gene Roddenberry. Oh, I mean, no. Roddenberry's middle name was Wesley.
Oh my god.
For a brief period, one of the other showrunners tried to talk him into making it Leslie, a female prodigy. And I found it quite interesting because that producer was like, you know, hey, like, people always do, like, adolescent boys. Like, why don't we take a look at the trials of adolescent girls? But, unfortunately, that went by the wayside, and we got Wesley Crusher.
Huh.
Yeah.
Seems kind of odd, too, thinking that, okay, here's a self-insert character you've based on yourself who's terrified of girls. Just terrified of them. Every single opportunity he has to get laid, he runs screaming from it. I have questions. I have many questions.
Gene himself did not show.
Yeah.
But that's Wesley. To Will Wheaton. I actually maintain that Will Wheaton is far worse.
Oof, that is setting a bar high. That's fighting words. I think if he heard that, he'd have to duel. Like, that's how serious that accusation is.
Well, I'm pretty sure he blocked me on Twitter.
Oh shit.
Bring it.
Oh, so you can't fight him. That's bullshit. You can't defend your honor.
Yeah. Although I think he migrated to Mastodon because everybody was too mean to him.
Right. So let us move on. Is there a difference between a Mary Sue and just a general, broadly defined heroic protagonist that the audience is supposed to project themselves onto, which is literally every protagonist, all the protagonists? Like, how do you draw the line, and if it matters at all?
Well, if you go back to the source, which is this A Trekkie's Tale, obviously written in response to some of the perennial foibles of fan fiction. I think what a Mary Sue is really defined as is being just comically badly written and to the point of not being believable as a character.
Right.
I think that even reading in genres like science fiction or fantasy, you know, where you can stretch the rules of the universe a little bit, or, you know, watching genre fiction on TV or in movies, there's only so much disbelief that you can suspend.
Yeah.
And at times, obviously these things are debatable. I think, like, sometimes, you know, this is a perennial problem with, like, for example, my dad, like, he'll be watching some popcorn movie, be like, oh, that's bullshit, that's not realistic. And I'm like, Dad, it's Spider-Man, who cares, you know?
Right.
Like,
this werewolf movie's unrealistic.
Yeah, but it's like, well, you know, like, Spider-Man has to have, like, laws of physics that he abides by, like, fine, whatever, you know, like,
yeah,
there is a point where it becomes, like, too ridiculous to believe. So I guess if a precocious chick with, like, a 200 IQ who can do advanced math and calculate ship's coordinates in her head, and she also has ice purple eyes and a perfect body, and everyone on the crew loves her, it's like, well, that's, like, a pretty blatant example.
Right.
But it seems, I really don't know if maybe just with the push to create more diverse and interesting female main characters in genre fiction and on the screen, especially with kind of the bullshit culture wars as out of control as they are, like,
right,
are we at a point where, you know, you're just going to get this absurd pushback to, like, any female character who isn't completely passive?
Right. Who has any kind of capabilities, like Going back to the example of Rey, I know she's very, very good at stuff, and at a wide variety of stuff, which is a little, like, not super realistic, but again, it's a space wizard movie, and Luke Skywalker, again, is not Mr. Realism here. He is a psychic space wizard farm boy who gets good enough to be an expert pilot over the course of an afternoon. He learns how to sword fight over the course of, like, 2 hours. But that's okay, because whatever, it's a fun movie. Like, we're allowed to be silly a little bit and suspend that disbelief for the sake of having fun.
Well, I mean, like, let's break it down, because, like, I actually am, because I do find it very funny how much I identified Rey with my own, like, youthful, like, self-insert character. But It's like, is she really that, like, unbelievable? Because, okay, so... yeah, Luke's like a whiny kid who lives kind of a barren life on a moisture farm, but he's a really good pilot, and good enough that they let him have an X-Wing, and then he saves the day by making the critical shot against the Death Star. Right. Like, okay.
Without even using the special equipment, he just looked inside himself.
Because he's got the Force.
Because he's just so inherently special. He is just special just because...
And isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing that, like, some Star Wars fans are pissed off about now, that, like, the Force isn't like a special talent? It's like, oh well, no, just anybody can do it.
Right. Anyone with an impure, inferior bloodline can do it.
Yeah.
And a subpar skull shape. I don't know.
Yeah, like, but. Rey also, and again, because Force Awakens is, like, I'm sorry, yes, I liked it, but it was pretty fucking derivative. Rey also lives on a barren planet, eking out an existence. She appears to have a kind of mechanical and engineering facility, which you can justify because, if she spent a lot of time, like, hunting and picking amongst, like, dead Star Destroyers.
Right.
She hangs out with robots. She could have learned a thing or two.
Right.
And then, okay, like, she has an affinity for the Force, which, okay, like, that's fine too. And then the other problem that I think I heard people were having is that Rey's talent with the Force is idiopathic, and that's bad. Like, it makes sense that Luke has the Force because his dad was Anakin Skywalker, but if Rey's parents were nobodies, that's not right somehow. I'm sorry. I'm kind of trying to talk my way through a lot of, like, the fan objections, just because it's like I really want to try to understand. It's like, am I too easy on Rey? Like, is she a bullshit character? Like, is Luke, like, the superior one?
Or is she more bullshit than any other character in this show? I mean, we have tons of wish fulfillment characters. Han Solo is, this dashing rogue who's a perfect shot, and the space princess falls in love with him, and his best friend's a werewolf, and and he's super good and clever and shit. Like, that's a little bit of wish fulfillment there, and again,
I guess because, like, they kind of maybe people forgive Han Solo because it's like, yeah, he's dashing as fucking Harrison Ford. He looks great in those pants,
Right.
He gets
he
the
can
princess.
Work a vest somehow.
Yeah, but there's also a touch of comedy to him because we see his sometimes unjustified arrogance, and we can kind of smile at it while not disliking him. Or like when he'll be on the Falcon and then there'll be a bump and, like, Toolbox will, like, they don't make him, like, a perfect character. But I mean, Rey doesn't exactly strike me as, I've seen people accuse her of having no personality. It was a little bit strange to me. I don't know if you've seen him, but the Red Letter Media, like, Mr. Plinkett assessment, the prequels. Right.
Who's the protagonist? I don't know.
Protagonist, yeah. Like...
Protagonist.
Yeah. So Mr. Plinkett, Mike Stacklasa, asks his interviewees to describe each Star Wars character, I think using only, like, non-physical adjectives. And so they're able to do it with the original trilogy characters, but with the prequel characters, they're stymied. Like, oh, describe Qui-Gon Jinn. He's stoic. Like, I can't think of anything.
He's a guy.
And, if I were to try to describe Rey, I'd be like, okay, she's tough. She's got kind of a hard shell, but...
she's sassy.
Yeah. Her shushing BB-8 and him being taken aback. It's like, that's a character moment. That tells you something about the character. But to some people, she's boring and sucks. I don't know what I'm missing.
I don't know. I do think this might be a particular problem to Star Wars too, just in that so many of the people I've met who refer to themselves as diehard Star Wars fan, their favorite thing to do is to complain about the movies.
Well, that's fandom. I mean, just look at Doctor Who fandom.
Just all the time. Like, they'll buy every bit of merchandise but never stop complaining about how much they hate whatever the most recent movie is. And it's sort of like, why do you do this? I don't understand.
Look at Doctor Who fandom going back to practically the first Doctor. That was in the early 60s. Doctor Who fans love to bitch about the show. It's
right. Like, who's the current Doctor? I don't like him. He's too silly. I don't like him. He's too sexy.
Yeah.
Every time they switch a Doctor, everybody gets really mad. He's too whatever.
Yes. And, you know, and I mean, that's fandom for you because,
right.
And I think like fandom and popular culture dominates a lot of our discourse because it's easy to have an opinion. It's like having an opinion on the Kardashians. Like the things about our world that are scary and pressing are often like very hard to understand. It's hard to tease out the details of why we are where we are. Like if you want to look at climate change, like not only is that fucking scary, it's hugely complex. Like who do you blame? Like do we blame people? What do we do about it? Right. Who the fuck has the time to understand that except fucking science nerds?
And we don't need to listen to those guys.
Exactly. But everyone went and saw fucking Force Awakens, so everyone can have an opinion on... Everyone went to see Last Jedi and can have an opinion on whether Rian Johnson sucks or not.
And in terms of media landscape, a think piece about The Force Awakens is going to get more clicks, unfortunately, than a piece about global warming, which is a real bummer.
Yeah, and like I completely include myself. I'm running a dumb movie podcast. I'm putting a ton of energy into it. And then a friend of mine will share on social media an article about climate change, and I'll maybe read half of it, and then I'll have to tap out because I'm too fucking depressed.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do? I don't know, but I sure as fuck can have an opinion on this terrible B movie from 1982, you know?
Right. Right. It's small things at a scale we can understand that don't make you want to hide under a blanket all day. They're fun to talk about, and it doesn't make you think about your own mortality.
Yeah, and I mean, we should also remember that this kind of like scared rabbit mentality also like serves capital, because I'm sure Disney is ecstatic about a couple of thousand very indignant man babies making a disproportionate amount of noise on social
absolutely
media.
It's gotten to the point where it's like, all right, this is just part of the premiere. This is the standard marketing campaign. I'm sure they're deliberately, every time they do something, they probably search all over Twitter, like, okay, let's find a guy who's mad about the Black Mermaid. Let's find a guy let's find some guys who are mad about Frozen again, who are still mad. There are MRAs are still very mad at Frozen for some reason. Like, it's just a standard part of the marketing strategy now to find a couple of assholes who are being like weird and racist or whatever, and to make us all feel like we're really accomplishing something by watching this like $500 million corporate product movie.
Well, the most woke thing you can do is to buy a ticket to a movie which stars some women and maybe had a woman behind the camera. Who knows?
Yeah. Supporting Hollywood, which is a great place for women, is the wokest thing that you can do. It's a good industry for women that has always supported the female gender.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how recently they removed it or if they've removed it. For the longest time at the shopping center at Hollywood and Highland in Hollywood, you know, built on the former set of D.W. Griffith's Intolerance, now a shopping mall.
Wow.
They had a sculpture of a casting couch.
Wow.
Which is like, and you know, is presented as like, oh, haha, yeah, you know this trope, you know, that you have to like suck a little dick to get a role. Like, it's funny, right? It's like, well, it's really not if you analyze it. Like, it's fucked up. Which, and I think they may have gotten rid of it in
Get your picture taken with a cardboard cutout of Victor Salva. Hooray!
That guy keeps working.
He keeps making
People
movies.
keep giving him work. Why?
It's not like he has like Roman Polanski levels of talent. He made Jeepers Creepers. He is very replaceable.
The most incredible thing about Salva is like he literally molested a kid, the lead actor of his film, on his first fucking feature.
Yeah.
First feature, he molested the lead actor of his film.
There's so many reasons why that's bad. People are like, well, like, on top of the obvious, it's also a labor issue, I think, if I can put on my little DSA hat. If you're mistreating the people who work for you, maybe you don't get to have people under your authority any. Crazy idea.
I
mean, how many chances is Max Landis getting? His father decapitated several children with a helicopter and still got work after that. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing with, Max Landis continually working is like, well, he's connected.
Right.
His father,
who decapitated several children. I cannot stress this enough.
As my co-host Tim and I from his pod call him, John Landis, the famous murderer.
Right.
In spite of his star having fallen significantly since his high point in the 80s, he still has a lot of cachet and clout in the industry. So you understand, like, why, okay, it's fucked up, but you understand, like, why Max Landis can work, But Victor Salva?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck has he made that, it's like, okay, like, I think, for example, like, I think Roman Polanski is, like, a monster, but...
Like, he does make good movies. I mean, I gotta admit, like, he's a brilliant filmmaker who likes to sexually violate young girls, but at least I could understand, like, I would kind of want to watch one of his movies because he's good at it. I'm not, like, itching to watch Jeepers Creepers. I feel like another director could handle Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah, like, if you take just his horror work alone, like Repulsion or The Tenant, iconic work, absolutely worth seeing. Yeah. And I do believe in even monstrous artists' work being accessible, albeit put in their proper context. It's like, let's not elide anything. Like, let's fucking talk about this. Let's talk about what enabled it to happen. Right. Jeepers Creepers is like another, like, kind of okay horror movie.
Yeah.
In an absolute glut of kind of okay horror movies, like in the wake of Scream. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I think it's connections too. Who was it? He was friends with some very important filmmaker who I'm very sad about now. Someone whose work I really admire, and it made me really, really sad to know that he was involved.
I joke with people that I've had on our show a few times about, like, oh great, we're the fucking Kitty Fiddler film podcast, because we have talked, like, openly about artists who are also abusers. We talked about the music producer Jonathan King, because he made films in his own defense.
Right.
He's an absolutely vile person. We talked about the lead actor in Ob in the movie, because I believe in pushing those kind of things into the open.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, God, like, I really feel like we're going to have to fucking talk about Victor Salva on Have You Seen This at some point? Because, like, it does, just talking about it does kind of boggle my mind. It's like, yeah, the guy working. And I know that the cliche of Hollywood is this disgusting place and, like, the worst people alive, like, crawl its corridors and make piles of money. But it's like, you think that, like, the absolute last straw would be someone who fucks kids,
and
but it's
himself
not
doing it.
Jesus
on the set
Christ.
Of his movie. That's really, like, 3 levels of unforgivable. And meanwhile, like, so many talented women just don't, like, get another chance. They don't get another shot. We can't let them in.
That is absolutely true. I have been looking into, because very soon on our pod we're going to cover Bright Lights Big City from the Jay McInerney novel. It was a movie with Michael J. Fox and flopped. But that was set up to be directed by a woman, Joyce Chopra, and she was fired. Ugh. They thought she was taking a little bit too much time setting up and discussing shots or something like that.
Oh no, caring about your work? So she's acting like a male auteur. Like, how many fucking times did they reshoot every scene in The Shining? Like 1 million.
Oh, you just asked Shelley Duvall about that.
Yeah, she went insane as a result.
Shelley's not doing too well lately, but point being, this was not isolated at the time. There was a cluster of female directors being hired at that period in the 80s and then getting fired.
Wow.
The most obvious example being Elaine May on Ishtar. Because that movie went wildly out of control. Right. But there were other female filmmakers being fired at the same time. Like, they were given a shot and then they were, like, yanked at the first opportunity. Huh. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of compare this to the experiences of, male directors given a shot, and, were they allowed to like fuck it up repeatedly, or did they get bounced,
right.
or, what causes a male director to be fired or not fired when a female director is.
Right.
So, but that's something I got to research. But I'm talking about my show and your show.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay. Like, what I'm thinking of is the director of American Psycho. Like, she really hasn't gotten
Mary Harron
that much work. Like, I could just imagine, that's an iconic movie. It's got cult status. It's infinitely quoted, and a bunch of people who really shouldn't model themselves after the main character. Mary Harron really hasn't gotten a ton of work after that.
Well, and that's an interesting question. And it's something that it's a thing that obsesses me, and is partially what led me to do the kind of show that I'm doing, where we take a second look at things. Because when you see a director or any creative who has moved on from their field, or maybe made a splash,
right.
and then not really come back, there are so many reasons why that could be the case.
Right.
And in particular, when it comes to female creators, I think it's, obviously you don't want to assume anything about a person's like personal story.
Right, because it could be a choice, whatever,
Yeah, but if you read, and in fact, I was just reading something about it today, a female animator talking about, in the wake of the cancellation of the Netflix show Tuca and Birdie, how she was kind of treated like shit by men that she'd worked with.
Damn.
And how that made her career in animation a lot harder. And, obviously she stuck it out, but
yeah.
There are a lot of women who didn't.
Yeah.
And that always gets translated into, well, women can't take it, or they're not trying hard enough, or their skin isn't thick enough.
Right.
Which, obviously, to make it in the media industry.
Yeah, you got to be tough, obviously, but there's a line, I feel like, between like, oh, you've got to tolerate being sexually assaulted repeatedly. What?
Yeah. And there's a difference between like having people like shit talk you, and then just being disrespected.
Right.
In the way that women are traditionally disrespected. And I've worked in male-dominated fields and like male-dominated offices, and I've been extremely fortunate. But, I've had moments where people have said shit to me and I've been like, excuse me? Like, I know you wouldn't fucking say that to a man.
Right.
I mean, I had a guy once tell me I was too pretty to be an AV tech.
Ugh.
Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, do you want me to help with this meeting or not?
Yeah. Oh, God. Anyway, we got way off to tangent, but we're talking, where the hell were we in this outline?
Well, hold all my bloviating, and maybe you can make it a bonus.
That's
feature
okay.
At some point.
Sure. Patreon content. All right.
If you want me to be like, I can hold forth a little less. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem. No problem. We're talking about women's issues broadly. It vaguely connects to the idea. So it's pretty easy to see that the term Mary Sue tends to be applied to female characters more than male characters. But what are some other, we've touched on this earlier, but what are some other beloved male characters who you think could potentially fall under the term Mary Sue, or maybe the male version Gary Stu? Like, we talked about James Bond. We talked about Wesley Crusher.
Well, look at all the characters that Tom Cruise usually plays. I mean, like, just look at Top Gun. Like, it's a movie that is like, the environment is extremely fucking cool, and they do cool shit all day, and there's very little conflict. Like, the main conflict of Top Gun is, I mean, yeah, it's kind of about Maverick and his dad, but it's also about, like, who will win the Top Gun trophy?
Whose gun is the toppest?
Yeah, and it's not like they were in, fucking Vietnam or something. No. But, so they have to have, like, these rogue MiGs come in at the end so they can have, like, a showdown. Like, they have to, like, gin up this kind of, like, reheated Cold War conflict. But, like, look at Tom Cruise's character, Maverick. Like, he's a fucking cool-ass guy. He's a naval aviator. Like, fucks the hottest chick.
He breaks the rules, but he gets away with it anyway, even though the military is generally frowns upon that. It's my understanding.
Yeah, like, everyone's like, you're dangerous, but you're the best goddamn pilot I know. It's like that. If that isn't masculine wish fulfillment, I don't know what it is. And in fact, like, a very close friend of mine, I'm sure his story was not unique. That movie made a massive impression on him. And, he joined ROTC because he wanted to become a fucking naval aviator. I don't, like, who else?
I would argue Harry Potter for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, he's this magic boy wizard who's very special just because he was born. And he has $1 zillion From goblins.
from
goblins.
Weirdly anti-Semitic caricatured goblins.
From goblins with unfortunate implications. And he didn't really have to do anything. Like, oh, he's fated because he has the scar. Like, he didn't do anything. He didn't do that. He got lucky. He got... It shows a lot of chosen one fiction is like that in fantasy novels, where the hero is the hero because he has the right birthmark, he has the right bloodline, and it's like you're so special. You're so special just because of some inherent thing.
Yeah, and I mean it's understandable, obviously, from the fantasy perspective. Like, everyone wants to feel special,
of course,
and it's not to say that people don't have often innate gifts that they can cultivate.
Of course.
But it's interesting how, again, jumping back to Star Wars and like Last Jedi, Rey's kind of like idiopathic talent for the Force out of nowhere is somehow seen as like not appropriate for the series because it doesn't hew to that trope of intrinsic kind of genetic, but not genetic like it was in the prequels. We kind of fumbled that a little bit.
We don't speak of that. We're going to pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah, like they realized that they tipped their hand with trying to make it scientific, so they pulled it back to the spiritual. And it's something which I don't understand about fans in general. I mean, I do and I don't. You know, obviously we all like our comfort food. We all like to eat frosting right out of the can.
Of course.
Sometimes we don't want to be challenged that much. But I don't see, again, as an artist, I don't see the utility in just doing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And I think it should be considered a sign of vitality if a franchise is like stretching a little bit and kind of taking a look at the old tropes.
Absolutely.
Which is hilarious to say, considering, again, like how derivative Force Awakens was. Right. It was just a complete retread of New Hope. But, you know, and I think they went a little bit further with, you know, Last Jedi.
Absolutely.
I legitimately think that they were trolling the negative fans with Admiral Holdo. I mean, she's a lady admiral with purple hair. That is a troll character. And I'm not saying that's bad. I was okay with it. I was like, whatever. You know, I don't have a problem with her arguing with Poe Dameron.
Who tells a male protagonist to sit down and shut up, and she's right to do so.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, again, I fully believe that they were doing that to be like, you know what, like, you toxic male fans can't tell us what to do, you know, which is like, oh, like, maybe it's silly, but it's like, well, you know, you guys made a lot of noise, this is what you get.
Yeah.
And this is what, unfortunately, this is what creativity is turned into in the era of social media, where you have this immediate reactiveness between creators and fans, which can be very hard to negotiate.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you see how fast a show or an idea can get killed if the reaction is negative enough.
And how quickly people, like, just kind of went up each other on freaking out about something. It's pretty intense. A little bit worrying as a creative, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if you've talked about it on the show or if you're planning to talk about it. It might be worth talking about the young adult community and how toxic that has become in certain
I'm a
sections.
Little nervous about wading into that because holy shit, that is a goddamn swamp. That's a mess. Oh, it's alarming. I've heard that like actual young people and teens who are into young adult fiction just don't go on these communities anymore because they're like, what the fuck? This is all terrifying.
Yeah.
They're worse than bronies. It's terrifying. They're legitimately worse.
We were talking about other Sues or Stews.
Yes. Other Sues or Stews.
I don't know. I mean, you mentioned Harry Potter, which is like, Harry Potter is he's a pretty lucky motherfucker.
Yeah, he's a lucky little shit. Fuck you. Fuck you, Harry.
I still haven't read the last book.
That's okay.
I've read the 6. Yeah, let's like,
you know what happens. He wins. The end.
Dumbledore dies.
Yeah.
And then everybody gets mad about Ron and Hermione.
Right. Let's see. Self-insert Gary Stu characters. Possibly Robin Hood. Maybe.
Yeah, like, well, where is the line between folk hero and Gary Stu? Because I mean,
folk heroes are deliberately kind of vague because it's this archetypical sort of idea. It's not really meant to be super detailed with a detailed backstory. It's a cipher for your cultural value, your hopes.
Yeah, I think he represents justice,
right?
Essentially. And I mean, maybe you can draw a line's character in Death Wish.
I think probably from him, possibly to Batman, right? Because he's like
vigilante.
Yeah, vigilante who ultimately does support the traditional system of power. Really, when you get down to it.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a loyalist to the King Richard.
Yeah, and especially because the vigilante is a corrective to a system that is wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, the problem isn't really with, an overbearing, like, fascist police that's not fascist enough.
Right. Absolutely. Like, oh, if only we didn't need warrants to do our job.
All those very popular action heroes of particularly the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think of the biggest action stars of the 80s.
Absolutely.
Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I'm thinking is like, I grew up watching these kinds of movies. My dad, like, I still,
they're tons of fun. I love them. I love them all. They're terrible, but not terrible, but like, I can appreciate the fact that this is ridiculous, but they're great. Yeah. I loved Dirty Harry. It's a great movie when he's jumping on the bus. It's just rad.
Hell, even like Pauline Kael, like, recognized its virtues, even if she was calling it overtly fascist.
It totally 100% is a fascist film, and it's awesome. It's so much fun.
Movie. Yeah. So you got your Dirty Harrys, you got your Charles Bronsons, shading into the 80s. You have, these were, I really feel like these came around in the wake of, like, and I'm not saying anything that we don't already know already. Mm-hmm. This is in the era of, like, Vietnam War, post-Vietnam War disillusionment, America asserting itself as a superpower in the face of, like, the Cold War. So of course you were going to have these very inflated, powerfully masculine figures on the screen.
Of course.
I mean, and like, if you take, like, a John Rambo, like, in his early incarnations, he was a tragic figure. He was somebody who was chewed up and spit out by his own government.
Right.
And then he became a cartoon. Like a Little World cartoon. There's a fucking Rambo cartoon show for kids.
And he fought alongside the Mujahideen, which is pretty awkward. In retrospect, he helped. He completely helped Osama bin Laden.
I was gonna say, I wonder if he ever got to meet Osama and, like, watch porn with him or something.
Oh God, I bet.
CIA asset, Osama bin Laden. But anyway, also known as Tim. No, so as the 80s wore on, got these more and more cartoonish Gary Stews. I feel like you could make a thesis out of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because just look at how beloved, and not just Stallone, like, just look at, like, Arnold.
Absolutely.
Even on the downslope of his career, his star really has not dimmed. People still love him. They love his movies. They love his persona. It doesn't fucking matter that he's not, like, a natural or skilled actor. Like, he is just a pure block of charisma.
Absolutely.
Like, that is absolutely a projection for, like, the male audience. But a guy who plays a indestructible robot or a muscular super soldier is somehow not unbelievable.
Right.
But a teenage girl getting off a desert planet is. I know I keep coming back to Ray, but it's just very fresh in my mind.
I liked Ray.
I did!
I liked Ray. Come on. She's fun. I like the new movies.
Yeah.
I will not be persuaded otherwise. I thought they were a good time. They were good fun.
Well, my thing is, like, I had a good time in the theater. Like, I'm a little weary of, like, fan discourse about them. Nasty.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, like, politically motivated, but it is. But, like, in a stupid ass, like, culture war, like, ew, girls kind of way.
Yeah.
And...
Or on the other side, like, it is so important that we have...
Yeah.
This girl space with... Well, I mean, I think it's nice for girls to have a character like that they can look at, but talking about it like, my God, this billion-dollar corporation's decision to reach out to more demographics in order to maximize their profit potential truly is the most important thing.
Yeah, and that is, like, I mean, you pretty much summed up my view on the whole thing, where it's like the best thing that I can say about representation in media and other similar hot button topics is like, oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, it is
Like,
nice.
I'm not against a movie like Black Panther. I just don't see what good it necessarily does materially for anyone except Disney execs.
Right.
I mean, it is kind of cool to go to, I mean, usually every year, Tim and I will go to either WonderCon or Comic-Con or both, you know, after Black Panther came out. We're at WonderCon, and there were all these black cosplayers.
Nice.
And like Wakandan costumes, like, oh, okay, that's cool. You know, that's great. I don't have a fun problem with this. This is fine.
I'm just a little bit nervous because it is still a billion-dollar corporation that does what billion-dollar corporations do. And the example I like to go to is when Disney Pixar made a movie called Coco, which is about like the Mexican Day of the Dead. And it was praised for being like really culturally sensitive and showing a lot of respect for men culture, which that's great. That's terrific. That's wonderful. But while they were trying to make this movie during the marketing campaign, the company actually tried to copyright the phrase Dia de los Muertos.
Of course they did.
What the fuck?
Of course they did.
They tried to like just lay their flag on someone else's entire culture. Just awful.
Which is so
They backed off
up.
finally, but I'm wondering did they back off because they decided like this was going to be the right thing to do, or because they were worried about missing out on ticket sales in Mexico, you know? It
could have been that, or it could have just been like somebody told them like you actually can't copyright a cultural holiday. I mean, I really feel like it would have had to have been an obstacle like that to be Disney.
Right.
And like that is, I mean, and I'm old enough to remember before sugar skulls and stuff like that were like a hipster thing, you know, before kind of like white Angelinos like myself discovered and like, oh, this is really great, you know, and like, that's a mixed bag. I'm not like a hardliner on cultural appropriation, but it's like be respectful, look at what you're doing, you know, recognize that it's not necessarily yours. And like, consider like, if I'm taking this, am I taking it away from someone?
Right.
Like, am I really elevating it as much as I think it is? And, you know, maybe to a degree, like, Disney did elevate the awareness in the culture, but it's like...
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's pretty nice, especially at a time like now, to have this mainstream that's a positive portrayal of Mexican people. I think that's a good thing, but when you're, like, literally laying a legal financial claim on someone else's culture, that's really fucked up. By any standard.
Yeah, and like meanwhile, Disney park employees like living in their cars because they're living wage.
Right.
What has Disney done again materially for the Latinx population of, say, just Anaheim?
Right.
Oh, you know, we provide jobs. You know, it's like, well, what? Like, really? Like, what are you doing besides just being like, well, we really respect your culture, so we're going to put it on the screen, like.
We're going to make money off of you because we're great. We're good people for this.
Yeah, and like in a more liberal political time for myself, you know, I totally believe in this shit. It's like, oh, representation is so important. It's so important. But it's because like I didn't really have an understanding of class and power,
of course,
in the United States and how that also plays out in the film industry.
And after so many white children's movies protagonists, seeing a couple of children's movies protagonists who aren't white is really refreshing. It is really nice, for sure.
Yeah. So it's like I can't be like, oh, this is dumb, this is bad, I hate idpol.
Yeah,
it's stupid.
and it totally does mean something for kids to have a character who's like, that's like me.
Yeah,
it does feel really good for them, and I don't want to take that from them.
Yeah, and you know, I guess the problem is that it's not a means to an end.
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's like a Band-Aid on a problem, basically, you know, because, okay, like, I mean, I'm sure we'll get like another Black Panther movie, you know, and, you know, those actors and crew they'll get a good paycheck, but like, does that really affect like the broader African-American community in any really like materially meaningful way beyond like, oh, we get a big major blockbuster that has people that look like us in it. Yeah. I mean, the maternal mortality rate for Black women in America is still like
horrific,
absurdly high. But hey, we can watch a fucking movie while you bleed out.
There's a lady Captain Marvel now. As a woman, I feel fulfilled. I feel seen. I'm glad there was a Wonder Woman movie with a strong woman with muscles, produced by, probably funded by some horrific crypto-fascist billionaire who wants to take away women's right to vote. But there was a movie with her in it. That was cool.
Yeah, like, wow, Brie Larson is such a badass doing propaganda for the U.S. Air Force.
Right.
It's like, these aren't good things. I mean, you know, it's like, and I'm a dumb idiot like everyone else in this country. It's like, I enjoy, like, I'll go see a fucking well-made superhero movie. I haven't enjoyed one since Winter Soldier, but whatever.
Yeah.
But hey, they're putting ladies in it, so, you know, what do I have to complain about?
Yeah. Yeah, it's media's fun. Hooray!
Have they accused any of the lady superheroes of being Mary Sue's?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a big like angry nerd boy thing against Captain Marvel. There was a bit of a kerfuffle. I'm not sure about Wonder Woman. I don't know about Wonder Woman.
Maybe she's sexy enough that she gets a pass.
She's wearing a bikini, so she's okay.
But the thing, I really liked how people were so mad about Brie Larson's feet.
What?
So
what?
A bunch of people were saying like, those aren't her feet in the movie. Those are stud feet, and they were posting pictures of her like, because she has like kind of a crooked toe, and so they were posting like close-ups of her feet at like red carpet events.
What is this era we live in?
Yeah. Well,
journalism.
This is the era in which no matter what actress's name you type into a search bar, it will autocomplete to feet. So,
God damn it.
There is that.
God damn it. I mean, we did have like a weird far-right little publication publish what they claimed, well, actually it was fake foot fetish porn of a sitting congressman. So, and the people who proved the mystery wrong were, of course, the dedicated people of the internet foot fetish community. So this is the era we live in. The history books are just gonna skip over this entire decade. There's just gonna be a blank page.
You know, God love the white hat perverts. I salute them.
Thank you, horny
Jesus
online
Christ.
people, for your courage.
Oh Lord, I feel like I have just absolutely dragged your show through some gutter topics. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's good. That's fine. So moving on, from foot fetishes to, I don't know, Oscar Wilde. That's probably related. Less than 6 to
Bosie's feet. Yeah. What do you think?
What kind of feet did he? I bet he was into feet. I'm sure you think. He didn't write about it, but I bet I'm sure he could appreciate a nice pair of feet.
It is the most like common fetish. So,
yeah.
Like it would be either that or piss.
Yeah. Oh, I could see him being into that. Could definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and also very common. But anyway, again, dragging your show through.
That's all right. Oscar Wilde argued that every story is some kind of projection of the writer, either the writer as hero or the writer as villain. Do you agree? Do you think it's possible to avoid that? Do you think it's possible at all to avoid putting ourselves antagonists?
That is a really good question. And my stock in trade isn't as an author necessarily. I mean, like, yeah. I do write, but for the show, and I mainly do like visual arts, which involves like a little bit of writing, but not much. I haven't delved much into fiction beyond my own youthful indiscretions. And certainly when you're a teenager, you have a little less sense of shame. You're exploring new ideas. You're naive.
And your emotions are all out there. They're so big.
And you're so horny. Just so horny. And so you're exploring these things in a very naive way. And I think the impulse is always write what you know.
Right.
I mean, again, I think I mentioned I'm currently reading Bright Lights, Big City, which is like, okay, this is Jay McInerney in New York. It just is. Yeah. It's a fact checker at a big New York magazine whose model wife has just left him, and he does a lot of drugs and drinks a lot. It's Jay McInerney, but it works because it's a wittily written book.
Right.
I'm trying to think of like counterexamples where the author is clearly either writing kind of against their grain or is exploring a really problematic character. Like not just a villain, but maybe like an anti-hero or something like that.
I mean, it's natural. We're going to put ourselves into our own work because that's the thing that is the person we know the best, usually.
Yeah. And like thinking of some of my like perennial favorite books, problematic fave, Rudyard Kipling, The Jungle Book. I mean, was Rudyard Kipling projecting himself into Mowgli, the jungle boy who lived with the animals and kind of ruled over them in sort of a Western way, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
Or other, I don't know, like other fiction faves. All my problematic faves are coming to mind. Lovecraft.
Oh, God.
Did he put himself into
so
stories?
much? Dear God. His every single thing was just, here's what I'm scared of. It's fish and non-Caucasians.
Yeah, every single protagonist is just like a translucent wasp shut-in.
Right. Who just fainted every time he, like, smelled spice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe. Every Edgar Allan Poe character is a sad widower.
Yeah, or we can get more literary. Death in Venice, Thomas Mann. That's Thomas Mann, right? Writing about a older author fixated on a young boy he sees on the beach, who is based on a real person, apparently. Maybe we're veering back into Victor Salva territory. I don't know.
That's a little alarming.
What about authors who write about women? Turn of the Screw, Henry James.
Yeah.
And I'm not the smartest person, but I do love Turn of the Screw, even though I find Henry James incredibly difficult to read.
Oh, he's very difficult, and especially because of the time. I mean, it's dealing with a topic that at the time was so shocking they couldn't explicitly say what it was, which just really makes it even harder to understand because they're just referring to this corruption scandal. It's like, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? What kind of corruption scandal? Then you look it up and you're like, oh,
I see why you were being so dense and oblique with this.
Right.
Yeah, so like for example, Turn of the Screw, he writes about a hysterical governess, Daisy Miller, I guess, which was later a film for Bogdanovich, Sybil Shepherd, and men making films and novels about women.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. I'm wondering if this might not be the writer is hero, but the writer is villain in some of these instances. I'm wondering how much of this is coming from they're seeing the troubles of women in the society that they're part of and that they don't do anything about.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, if you think of a lot of, like, kind of really popular novels of kind of the, what do you call that when you're Charles Dickens and you've written, like, hundreds of thousands of words and you serialize it in a magazine?
Right.
Stuff like his are, like, the Woman in White.
Oh, Wilkie Collins?
Yeah. Yeah, which are, like, they're more, like, sometimes they're like ensemble pieces.
Right. There's a bunch of different characters, a bunch of different viewpoint characters. But God, I love Woman in White. There is like a hero artist character though, who's like he's the tutor of the damsel in distress, and he goes away, and then things get really bad, and they're like, oh no, if only our art tutor were here, he would save the day. I can't help but wonder if that's a little bit of self-insertion from the author. If only our art instructor were here, he would rescue me from the villain. Said no woman ever. Which
I think found its apotheosis in Lady in the Water, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, in which the villain is a critic.
Is a film critic, and the hero, the martyr, the Jesus Christ character is even played by Shyamalan.
By M. Night, yeah.
Damn it.
Which maybe it's just with like time. And maybe it's just because the culture's become like so degraded and cynical. Right. But reassessing like M. Night and his incredibly dumb movies, you kind of have to go like, you know what? Respect. You fucking went for it, dude. You just fucking put it out there. Yep. Like, you just put in the fucking. Well, okay. Like that brings us around. Gary Stu, like M. Night in his own movies.
Absolutely.
Like he literally put a heroic chosen one character in fucking Lady in the Water, like played by the director. So like, okay, well, all right, done. All right, talk to you later. No.
Oh my gosh, M. Night Shyamalan.
Well, that was actually a very fruitful kind of I don't know if it's dull for the audience or whatever, but this kind of like cycling through notable characters from literature and mass media, but. It does kind of put it into perspective, especially because like the cultural discourse has become so fraught right now with like strong female characters. No, this female character is too strong.
Right.
And also me and my 10 friends from Family Court are going to boycott your movie. So to the point where, like this week, there's been some incredibly stupid discourse about filmmakers like Scorsese and Tarantino, where, Tarantino does violence against women, it's time we fucking cancel him. Like, well, he also made Kill Bill and Jackie Brown. And I am not a Tarantino booster.
No. I love Jackie Brown, but honestly, a lot of his work doesn't do it for me, but he's
good at what he does, but he can be derivative, and the excited fanboy from a video store thing is like a little bit old hat for me. But whatever. Like, he's doing what he wants.
But he's doing what he wants, and people love it. I can't deny that. It sure does resonate with a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, like, and especially like, we covered Tarantino ripoff films on the show, which make you appreciate what he's good at. So credit where it's due.
And I will stand Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is just really fucking good. It's really,
possibly
really good.
His best movie.
Absolutely his best. Because it's about something other than, hi, I'm Quentin Tarantino, watch me jack off for 2 hours. It's like about something other than himself, and it's fucking great.
Hey, I'm going to say the N-word. You like feet, right? Boy, I like feet. There has been all this really dumb discourse about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood before it is even really hit theaters.
Oh, God. Right.
Oh, well, it's about the murder of Sharon Tate, and Margot Robbie has hardly any lines. Like, cancel. Okay. Then there were people arguing about Scorsese. Like, Scorsese, yes, he is a filmmaker beloved of many a bro. But...
But
I think his shit's
good filmmaker.
And someone...
Hot take. That Scorsese kid, he's going places. He's got some talent.
I actually saw a tweet this week where someone was... You know what? Let me find the fucking... I don't want to, like, misrepresent it. And I'm not going to name this person because that's pointless.
Right.
They've probably already been dragged to filth.
Right. Does it use the phrase emotional labor? Because I feel like you fill your bingo card if the phrase emotional labor is used regarding a piece of art.
Do not even let me get started because people don't even use the term right. It's a specific academic term relating to managing customers' emotions in a service framework. It is not listening to your boyfriend when you're kind of tired. Like, that's not what it is. But anyway, I won't name the person, but she was responding to a somewhat well-known guy who writes for The Nation. I'll spare him too. They were talking about, in response to this Nation writer saying Scorsese has been hit and miss for nearly 30 years. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, we can have a talk about that. This person replies, Scorsese needs an editor of real gravitas, someone he respects, who says, Marty, there are 5 second acts in this movie. We're getting rid of an hour. Now, because I can't not take the bait, I responded to that on the podcast account with, did you just fucking drag Thelma Schoonmaker? Literally one of the most respected editors in the entire industry.
Wow.
And Scorsese's constant collaborator for literal decades. Like, in one of the rare areas of cinema where women have made headway.
Editing. I did not know that.
Yes, there are many well-respected female editors for whatever reason. I haven't delved into the reasons for those, but, for example, my favorite movie of all time, edited by a woman, Anne V. Coates, Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh, wow.
So, because people are so focused on this very hot take of like, this bro movie culture where we're just making bro movies about bro things. Obviously, they're all made by bros. I guess, fuck Thelma, fuck all the women who apparently work for Tarantino, because he actually does have quite a few female crew members on his films.
That's cool.
So, I guess that's an example of where the idpol representation in film argument just becomes a reductio ad absurdum. Right. Where it's like, you're like, oh, these are bro movies that bros like, so they're worthless, like can't this. It is so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And again, it being film Twitter, it's a lot like film YouTube where like you don't have to know a fucking thing about film, but you can bloviate about it.
yell the phrase plot hole, regardless of whether or not there is a plot hole, and you're a film YouTuber now.
Yeah. And maybe I don't have room to talk. You know, I have a film podcast. I got my film degree a long time ago. What have I done with my life? But, you know, I try to bring information to people, and if I'm wrong, I encourage people to tell me, like, no, you got this wrong, because I don't want to spread misinformation.
Right.
So if you're going to come for Scorsese, maybe at least verify the demographic makeup of his crew.
Right.
Like, that's all I'm saying.
And I understand that filmmaking is a collaborative process that a lot of people are involved in, and I think a lot of people don't know that. They think there's a director and actors, and that's it. And they even forget about the director, like the people who get really mad at actors because of the things the characters do. Like, they think that the actors are just making it up as they go along. They don't understand that someone else writes the words down that the actors say.
Yeah, and like characters doing stuff you don't like or that you think is bad, that's a whole other discussion. But like, I don't remember, was it you or was it one of my Twitter mufos who was like, we start talking about filmmakers like this, like, aren't we just subscribing to auteur theory?
I did not say that. I don't know.
I think it was, I think it might have been a film critic, Maddie Whittle, a very good follow on Twitter. Very savvy film critic. And she's absolutely correct because, again, we're giving so much cachet to like a singular person on a film set. Right. And even in the era of, say, Kubrick, who exerted very tight control over all aspects of his film, or a Hitchcock, those are rare birds indeed.
Absolutely.
Filmmaking is a collaborative medium, and there's very, very rarely like one all-encompassing shot caller.
Yep.
You know, even the people with the money they're still gonna you're still gonna have a push-pull with crew, right? And like the creatives,
like David Lynch, he obviously has his very own distinctive style, but so much of what goes into his work is just, oh, that happened on set, we're gonna put that in there. Like the whole Bob being a thing happened by accident.
Yes,
it was just one of his crew members his reflection got caught in a mirror, and he said, "You look really creepy. You're a demon now. Here you go."
Yeah, and
that's amazing.
And to kind of fight against that cultural notion of film director as absolute dictator, you know, Lynch has spoken out against that himself.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like, no, that's not how you run a film set. I don't abuse my cast and crew.
I don't want people to be afraid. I want us to have a good time. We're a team. We're making something creative. Let's be friends.
Yeah, and
like it's sad that that's such a rare thing to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's because we have kind of, and there's so many reasons for this, we've kind of exalted sorry, dude, I know you're long dead, the Erich von Stroheim-like figure, you know, leather boots and riding crop, you know, director is like absolute control of everything on the set, often to a toxic degree. Like, I mean, if you look at how Bertolucci treated Maria Snyder on the set of Last Tango in Paris.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you know, just to name like one example. I mean, one of my, again, problematic fave, Lars von Trier.
Oh, yeah.
He's been accused of abusive behavior on his set.
Yeah, Bjork really, really had some grumpy things to say about him.
Yeah, and like I've gone to bat for the guy in the past. Is like, you know, I don't believe his films are misogynist. I think that's a misreading of what he's doing. But you know what? Like he does seem like a shithead in real life.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Like, but you don't have, like you were saying, and like Lynch was saying, you don't have to work that way. That's not the way to get optimal.
Right.
But I think because we see films that were brilliant, like in spite of the conditions, and we're like, oh, this must be how that happened. So you have to shit on people constantly.
Yeah. We just don't question it. We question this idea that, oh, someone has to suffer for our entertainment. Like, it's kind of a fucked up thing. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I love art, I love film, but this is entertainment. It's not like we're at war. We're not defending ourselves against a foreign invasion. We're making a movie about, I don't know, gangster or whatever. Kind of ridiculous that we accept. Like, yeah, someone should should be injured in a way that gives them a permanent physical disability in order so that I can watch this fun movie about vampires. Kind of fucked up.
I mean,
that's not great.
Yeah, another director I love, William Friedkin, like fucked up Ellen Burstyn's back on The Exorcist.
Oh God.
Because she was on a harness, and they had to do an effect shot where she's pulled back, and she was like, "Can you get the guy to stop pulling so hard?" Like she caught him like shaking his head no to the guy like operate the thing, and
Jesus.
yeah, she had like permanent back problems.
Right, Uma Thurman like smashed into a tree on one of the Kill Bill movies. Quentin Tarantino threw a fucking tantrum about she didn't want to drive the car because she felt unsafe in it.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like looking at it, like I saw the footage, and if Quentin has any kind of a soul, like he probably still feels bad about it. Sure. Maybe he smoothed it over the Uma. Maybe they haven't, but it doesn't make it right.
Yeah. And
it doesn't mean we should just like gloss it over, because again, I mean, and if you want to get into your like, again, the if you want to put on your DSA hat, that's like that's a labor issue.
It is.
You need to treat your crew and your cast with respect. Like there's no, like, art is very important, but suffering for art is just a absolutely tremendously overblown and ridiculous concept.
Yeah.
Like suffering does not make great art. Like suffering makes it hard to make art. Often impossible.
Demanding that someone else suffer for your art is particularly awful. If you're just a huge masochist and this is your choice, then I guess that's your prerogative. But demanding that someone else put herself in harm's way for your art is really not okay with me.
Yeah, because I guess it's one thing if you're like, I don't know, if you're painting in your basement and you're exposing yourself to the toxic fumes of the paints, that's one thing. But like, in a collaborative medium, and that applies to certainly film or music, or
even writing, honestly. I mean, you have editors, you have a guy who designs the book, you have beta readers, you have fact checkers.
Yeah.
You have other people. I mean, it's very, very solitary, but I don't think there's such a thing as purely individualistic art. There's usually someone else involved in some way.
Yeah, because I think to get like purely individualistic art, you'd have to go to like outsider art, where there's like little to no input. Where
a guy is found dead and someone discovers he has a notebook full of all of these drawings or something that nobody.
Yeah, you'd have to be a Henry Darger, basically, to be like the true like solitary artist. But maybe that's kind of a disease of our culture, like certainly American culture, where we worship the individual over all else, and we love like Horatio Alger type stories where people luck into incredible success all on their own volition, kind of forgetting humans are social animals, and we're supported from, if we're lucky, supported from a young age by all the people around us, certainly formed, if not supported. So
absolutely,
there's that. But I don't know. We named some characters. We named some Sues.
Yes. Last question, I think. We went on yet another tangent.
Yeah, I'm
That's
sorry.
Okay. It's fun. Who cares? It's a podcast. It's a friendship simulator. People can listen and pretend that they're friends with two very smart arty ladies and feel really cool.
They'll be like, well, like, yeah, like Jen's cool. You should lay off the caffeine now.
No, never. I refuse caffeine.
Well, if you like this, please listen to Have You Seen This? Available on Spotify, iTunes, Cloud.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question. Do you think the term Mary Sue is still worth using, or should we just abandon it because it's become so diluted? And if we gotta abandon it, what would be a good way to talk about that kind of ridiculous, wish fulfillment, self-insertion character?
Well, I think I made the point earlier that I don't want to say that fanish discourse and tropes has kind of polluted the mainstream. That sounds too pejorative, but it has leaked out there, especially with what used to be niche fandoms, like suddenly becoming incredibly lucrative.
Right.
Like now everybody's a nerd. So, you're going to see more of this kind of nerdy discourse. And it's like, I think we were saying, maybe like off mic or before the show, that there are certain terms which are extremely useful and then are seized upon by the general public and then are just beaten beyond recognition.
Right.
Or, overused to the point of uselessness. Gaslighting being one.
Oh, God, yeah. Gaslighting, mansplaining.
Terms
that refer to a very real distinctive thing that it's great to have a term to be able to describe it, for sure. It's great to be able to describe, oh, that's gaslighting, or oh yeah, that's mansplaining. That sucks when that happens. But
yeah, and it's a mixed bag, because obviously the awareness of abuse dynamics is critical, because you're giving people the language to describe often what has happened to them.
Right.
And that's a step towards rectifying it, or at least healing from it to a degree. But, words get chewed out of shape constantly. It's how, like, emotional labor has been deformed as out of its original meaning as, like, a specific phrase having to do with labor in a service context. And now it's just like, oh, like, my boyfriend, like, whines at me a lot about his job, and I don't like it. Like, I'm always doing the emotional labor.
Right.
It's become like this very bourgeois, like, lady of the house. Oh my God, my husband didn't remember to order the fucking cupcakes for the kids' party this weekend, and I have to have the perfect party kind of thing. When it used to refer to, like...
Was it stewardesses? I remember there was a book called The Managed Heart that was all about, like, how flight attendants in the 1970s, a big part of their job was doing this emotional labor and, like, making the customer feel like, hi, I'm your girlfriend in the air. And it just really fucked them up, really divorced them from their own emotions by monetizing it in this really dehumanizing way.
Yeah, thank you for cutting to the heart of it. That's exactly what it is. And so and finally bring it the fuck back around to my point. The term Mary Sue, which originated in extremely female fandom spaces. It's not to say that there weren't, like, guys writing fanfic, but as someone who dabbled in fandom for like close to a couple decades, these were very female centered pursuits.
Yeah, fanfic does seem to be kind of a woman thing. I mean, I know guys write it, but over and over again, it just seems to be, like, very, very, very female, very teen girl.
Yeah, and so, without speaking with any, measure of judgment, fandoms being often, at least the fanfic spaces being very female, these terms were kind of confined to that fanish, enclosed female space. But again, we had the explosion of superhero fandom and Return to Star Wars fandom and everything. We have social media.
Geek culture just becoming mainstreamed in a really, really big way is a little weird sometimes.
Yeah, so geek culture metastasized because it's very profitable. And now that everything in pop culture has been turned into this gender against gender culture war, you see the term Mary Sue weaponized to mean, I don't like female characters in my stuff doing stuff. I mean, like, I hate to be reductive, and I don't buy into most of the kind of, like, for a good example, look at the site The Mary Sue, which is a female-centered kind of, like, geek
geek
pop
feminist pop culture
website. Yeah, like, I've moved away from that, but that doesn't mean that I don't see a lot of the misogyny in, what is flung at women in fandom.
Oh, yeah.
Female creators. It's like, it's there.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't forget the person who got the most heat for calling Ray a Mary Sue. He's an accused rapist.
Wait, who was this?
Max Landis.
Oh, God, it was him doing that?
Yeah, when he was still on Twitter, he tweeted, like, Ray's pretty much Mary Sue.
Oh, my God. Well, we've come full circle.
Yeah, did I bury the lead there? I thought that I brought it up when we were talking about the Landises.
We might have. I think it might have gotten lost with me thinking about how his dad decapitated 3 people, 2 of them children. That's sort of... I can't get over that.
Little plug here. If you can get a copy of the book Outrageous Conduct, might be out of print.
I bet it's out of print. I bet they don't want you to buy that book.
Probably. But if you can get a copy of the book Outrageous Conduct, it tells you all about what happened on the set of the Twilight Zone movie and the aftermath. Absolutely a little bit dry, but if you like true crime at all, and if you're interested in, the seamier side of Hollywood and who isn't, I recommend digging up that book. It's at my local library. It might be yours. So anyway, I I guess that does bring us full circle because, yes, the person who accused Ray of being a shitty Mary Sue character is absolutely one of the most toxic people in Hollywood.
Right.
So,
and the son of a
take
murderer.
that for what you will. A rapist who's the son of a murderer.
The son of a murderer who killed one of the only nice guys. Like, Vic Morrow sounded like he genuinely was a good dude. And it's like, seriously, the one guy in Hollywood who's not, like, secretly a molester, and he gets his head cut off by a helicopter.
And before he could reconcile with his daughter, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Oh, fuck. That's the worst.
At the time he died, he left her $1 in his will.
Oh, my God.
And she was 84, 85, so she was like 21, 22
God
or something.
damn.
I could be wrong. Yeah. Hollywood's a fucked up place,
It
man.
is. Leave it. Take to the sea. Return to the ocean. It's better.
You know what? Fuck Hollywood. Go back to the little hermetic fan spaces. Write whatever shitty Mary Sue self-insert you want.
Yep.
You don't have to show it to anyone. Or you know what? Just show it to your friends who understand.
Yeah.
Who the fuck cares? Yeah. It's supposed to be fun. Fandom is supposed to be fun, and it's like it's not fun anymore.
No, it's depressing. It is a bummer. All right, I think that is it for tonight. Thank you for coming on the show and talking about film and Mary Sue's and fandom. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for indulging me. I feel like I ran at the mouth quite a bit. So
no, it was fun. It's fun to have these kinds of discussions about culture in film that don't revolve around the like, it's a strong female character, but is she too strong? It has a little bit more nuance than that.
Well, if I can encourage anybody in the audience to, think a little bit more critically, then, maybe I've done some good in the world.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you again. This was fun. That's all for this episode. If you like what you heard, please head over to patreon.com/writegood, that's RITEGUD, and subscribe. And be sure to listen to us next time when we talk about men writing women very, very badly.
This has been Write Good with R.S. Benedict, hosted by R.S. Benedict and produced by Matt Keeley for KS Media LLC. This has been a Kitty Sneezes production. For comments and concerns, please write to us at writegood@kittysneezes.com. That's RITEGUD @kittysneezes.com. If you'd like to support us, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/writegood.
kittysneezes.com in color.